This is SimNews.TV, and you're listening to the iWeekly show. Welcome to the iWeekly show, the premier place for news, headlines, and analysis on all things iRacing, the premier online racing simulator. I am your host for today, Mr. Hashtag Do You Mind himself, Jake Sparey, bringing you the rundown on all things iRacing for the next half an hour. We'll get straight into this one. It's been a very busy week. And let's talk Blancpain GT series. First and foremost, 6 hours of Spa, 2 races to go in the championship, and arguably the greatest race that sim racing has ever seen, ever. 4 drivers, 4 teams, shall we say, all had a chance at winning at some stage during this event. It came down to 3 drivers having a chance at the end, 3 teams finishing within 2.5 seconds over 6 hours. It's unheard of. It's even more unheard of when you think that there was 3 different vehicles in those top 3. And it's even more baffling to hear when it goes down to a last lap battle between Coanda and Core. Unbelievable. Core Sim Racing, leaders of the championship coming into this race. Pole position for what has been a 100% on pole positions. Core have got, let's put it this way, 5 out of 5 thanks to Frederick Rasmussen, who is arguably the greatest man in GT right now. And nobody's come close to Rasmussen in terms of his overall pace. He was a little bit slow off the start. He lost the lead. He spent quite a bit of time fighting to get back that lead in the opening hour. Had to keep on working. The ultimate strategy games came on and played. You had the likes of when do you double stint your tyres. You had Coanda going off onto a different strategy with their 8 machine, taking their tyres early. And you had the likes of Core going on that 2-tyre call, same as Pure. But for Core, it came down to a fact of they were 30 seconds back with 2 hours to go. And they still had the audacity to come back with Frederick Rasmussen. And I think that the effort that he was putting in, the fastest laps, the 2:16s that he continuously pumped in time after time after time again, I think this changes something for Core Sim Racing, because they were a very good team. And they were a very good team for 4 rounds of the championship. And they still are a very good team. But Core Sim Racing Orange and Core Sim Racing itself have gone from a very good team to a great team. And from Frederick Rasmussen, in my opinion, he has gone from being a very good, if not a great driver. He's become a legend with that drive. Because you don't just pull off a second a lap on someone every single lap. Even if they're on 3-hour-old tyres, you still have to do that on 2-hour-old tyres. And that was done absolutely beautifully. And there's not much that people can say around that, except Frederick Rasmussen did a beautiful job yesterday, because I'm filming this on a Sunday. He did a brilliant job yesterday of just bringing himself to that next level, putting everything on the line in that McLaren, and actually getting the rewards for pushing so hard for so long and actually making the moves. I mean, you have to talk about Coanda as well. Coanda were close. They were incredibly close, but it does come down back to tactics with Coanda, because they pushed so hard. They pushed so hard during that race. And for Coanda, they're pushing, and the fact that they were on the alternative, the fact they had to bring Mitchell de Jong back in, the X Games gold medalist, and the amount that they were pushing, they had to go on the no tyres call on the final stop. They could have dropped down onto pit road. They could have dropped back and tried to push it back through at a second a lap, but who catches Rasmussen when he's at that pace? Mitchell de Jong's very consistent, yes, but I'm not sure his pace would have been enough to catch both of them up. I mean, you talk about what happened with Hoyksingveld Core Motorsports. That was very interesting with Coanda. The fact that they were in the lead, Alexander Voss behind, getting very impatient, their battles with Pure, and the fact that they were in a situation where they wanted to push and they wanted to get past and unlap themselves because, quite arguably, they feel that they are bigger than what their reputation is at the moment. I think that Alexander Voss maybe should have had a little bit more patience. He did have damage. It wasn't always going to be a necessity of him getting forward, but in the end, it didn't really matter. I mean, Gregor Hutu was one lap down. Nice to see him driving around in Blancpain. Clearly more important than iRacing World Championship. But it's nice to see the fact that we had a great battle going on for around P16, P17, and all those battles on circuit happened on the same piece of real estate, and it became a really, really interesting fact. Should have Coanda pulled off to the side? Well, arguably, yes, they could have saved a second, well, lost a second in that situation, but they lost half a second in the fact that they had the issue with Alexander Voss trying to send one down the inside of Fania. But in reality, they didn't really lose too much time by keeping ahead. In fact, it probably did do them better keeping them ahead in that situation than it would have done staying behind, because that would have brought Frederik Rasmussen and Core Sim Racing back into play earlier than De Jong would have wanted to. He tried to outrun the border, shall we say, in the United States, and in the end he fell a little bit short. Brilliant battle though on the final lap. 2 tyres on the grass, contact here and there for days. One of the all-time great overtakes from Frederik Rasmussen, going round the outside at the second part of Les Combes, down to the inside, big defence into Rivage, and ultimately Core wins this one and should have the title by having a 28-point lead going into the final race of the season, giving them, arguably, 14th or higher for the championship. You would back them to do that. We have to talk about Pure as well, because of the fact that they were there and they were close, and they are proven winners this season in the form of Maximilian Benecke, Ivo Howler. Today, though, they put Patrick Pichler behind the wheel. Part of that comes down to the fact that in the 24 hours of Spa, he crashes out from the lead on the second lap, but we will divulge onto that in a little bit. But for Patrick Pichler, for the efforts that he put in, he wasn't quick enough. Absolutely, he wasn't quick enough. And I don't think he was adjusted to the 4GT well enough to drive that at a pace that a race-winning Pure team needed. And as a second driver, Ivo Howler, who had been training more, was more suited to that than Patrick Pichler was. And I think that it showed in the fact that from being ahead by going light on the fuel at the end of the first stop to gain that track position, I think that Pure played the game very well, but I think there was an element of Pure losing out because of the fact they put Benecke in for 4 stints in a row. Then Pichler, when they needed someone quick there, when Rasmussen gets back in the car, when De Jong needs to get back in the car, it doesn't play out for Pure. And it's a missed opportunity. They won at Silverstone. They've done very well to get themselves into race-winning positions, but Pure have never been the strongest in Blancpain, and that is surprising. And what Pure need to do now for next year, because they are out of the title race, is that they cannot afford to have such a slow start to a season as they did at Monza, at the second round of the championship, at Brands Hatch. They need to be finishing every race, and you need to be up there fighting strongly at every race. The 4GT is not the strongest car. Not by any stretch of the imagination. The 4GT is not the strongest car. Part of that comes down to balance of performance at the start of the season, but I think Pure need to find themselves in a cozy little cubbyhole which gets them into play for next season. Other things you need to talk about during that race: Odox, all 3 vehicles crash. Evolution Racing Team, with Riley Preston behind the wheel, the unluckiest man in sim racing, they crash because Riley Preston's the unluckiest man in sim racing. And ultimately, it was the greatest thriller that Blancpain GT Series has ever thrown up. It was a fantastic race from start to finish. You had to physically write down which tyres were which and who was on what. And ultimately, it comes down out to the fact that Core Sim Racing have one-upped everyone with the pace in the McLaren that Frederik Rasmussen has had, and with the fact that Coanda in the 8, remember, this is the 8 machine. It's not the number 1 that won the championship with Rens Broken, Marcus Lenderman, and the likes of drivers like Klaskavekis. This is the 8 machine. This is their B team, essentially, that's done very well. You got Mitchell de Jong. You've got Rocco Barone. You've got the like. In fact, you could call it a C team in certain elements with David Williams, Rocco Barone, and Philip Stam. You know, you don't. That's not a title-winning car, in my opinion, but they've brought themselves into a title picture through consistency. And again, Coanda have not been consistent enough. Core, even though they had the big disconnect at the start of Silverstone on the warm-up lap, had to go from the back of the field to go forward, they still came out with a top 15. You talk about the likes of their racing. Every time, Core's been on pole. Core has been at the front, challenging in every single race. And you need a car and you need a team that can put you at the front and challenge for every single race. So, a lot of good stories coming out of Blancpain. 1 round to go in September at the Nürburgring. It's going to be something to watch, as Blancpain has always thrown up some of the greatest races, I think, ever in iRacing, sim racing. You talk about the likes of Alexander Voss and his charge through the field at Imola. You talk about the famous one-tyre call at Silverstone. You talk about the disconnect at Spa last year that Coanda had, and they had to fight their way back through. It's just been brilliant. But it wasn't the only Spa race that we had over the weekend. The 24 Hours of Spa somehow collided in schedule, meaning that RaceSpot couldn't broadcast 24 Hours of Spa. But that's another point, and we'll just keep aside on that. 24 Hours of Spa, what a race that was as well on the top split. Redline decided to throw a car in. A lot of vehicles get put up into that one. You talk about likes of Pure, Redline, GT Ross, Jim Racing came in, ERT, Vortex, Movano, Iberia, Vendaval, everyone getting in. And most of those teams actually crashing out of that event. And that shows you just how difficult a 24-hour race can be. And this was a 24-hour race of one class. Different vehicles you can have. You could have the Mercedes, you could have the BMW, but of one class, it did not work out for many of the big teams in the 24 Hours of Spa. And that is really something that you need to keep an eye out on. If all those teams are crashing out, if you talk about a Redline team that runs Carroll, that runs Jose Maria Lopez, who's actually a Movano driver, but is running for Redline in that race. You talk about Jose Maria Lopez of Formula E. You talk about likes of Bonner House, who's got himself a world's fastest gamer seat. Very well deserved as well. And I'll give my congratulations to him right now. If you talk about that team crashing out, you talk about Pure and Pichler crashing out. You talk about GT Ross. You talk about Jim, ERT, Vortex, Movano, Iberica. All of those teams could have won that race. All those teams had that potential to win that race, but all of them crashed out. And in the end, it comes down to a last-hour decision. It was a 3-car battle in the end. It was between Triton Racing, it was between Team RSO, and it was between Dream Factory. And Dream Factory had the lead. And I tuned into this with about an hour to go. I wasn't able to see the finish, but with an hour to go, Dream Factory, a team that I'd never heard of before, and I may be a little bit blunt in the way that I look at sim racing. I don't drive. I only watch and I only look at the teams at the top and see who is good and who's not good. But Dream Factory, who had had a couple of Gathering of Tweakers races before, had been, slightly knocking on the door, second, third split. Suddenly, on the top split, they are up there. And they are putting some brilliant laps in. You've got drivers like Diego Catalan, Raul Diago, Jordi Clara, Alex Q. Alex Q doing that job on the way home, trying to just hold on to everything, bring Dream Factory the most unlikeliest of wins. What a brilliant story it would have been if they got their strategy right. RSO go for the no tyres on the final stop. And Team RSO, Team Rennsport Online, take the 24 Hours of Spa away from Dream Factory in the way that only Team RSO can, as we've seen in VLN, and that's on the strategy call. And RSO arguably are the best team in the world on strategy, because they get it right every time, every race, in every vehicle. They're right on it with the strategy. And that's what brought them the win, and that's what deserves them the win ultimately. A no tyre call when they're 17 seconds back when Dream Factory comes down in for their final stop. They go, we've got to go no tyres. Dream Factory decide to go 4 tyres. In that situation, there's a bit of naivety because they're 13 seconds behind. They got David Nowakowski and they've got the team of Triton Racing behind them, the all Polish outfit. And the fact that Dream Factory didn't see RSO as a threat potentially in that final stage of the race, maybe it's a little bit of naivety by the fact that they're not normally thrust up into such a high position and they just didn't click it, or they just didn't catch on to RSO as a threat in the final stages. But take no credit away from Dream Factory. They thoroughly deserve to be up on the podium. Arguably, they should have won this race, and it would have been the fairy tale story come true. RSO have to come and spoil the party with a boulevard of broken dreams for the Dream Factory team. But ultimately, you have stars now out of Catalan, Diago, Clara, and Q. And these are now drivers that many endurance teams will have to have a look at, maybe help develop a little bit more in terms of their abilities to go forward. But Dream Factory now are on the map, maybe should qualify for Blancpain next season. Maybe they should try and work on their iRating to get themselves up into top split races. But all 4 of these drivers, especially Alex Q. Alex Q now becomes a driver that is a commodity. And, it happens in quite a lot of racing that you get drivers a commodity. I'll segue a little bit into the iRacing Grand Prix series, not the World Championship Grand Prix series. A driver of Emil Stanciu finishes second today at Road America. Although he's 45 seconds back of Marcus Jensen, the race winner for Apex Racing UK, Stanciu was the number 20 driver out of 20. He had the lowest iRating out of everyone. He just made it into the split, and he comes out with a P2. He beats drivers like a Roscoe, who had troubles, Faro, who had troubles. He was holding off Jan Brezina, who is no slouch in his own right. Stanciu now becomes a commodity. Alex Q is now a commodity. So is Jordi Clara, Radiago, Diego Catalan. Dream Factory are on the map now. And so many teams drop by the wayside in that race. It just shows you if you can keep a vehicle on the island in a 24-hour race, you have a great chance of getting a solid result. And Dream Factory so nearly did it. The only thing that he should have done, final pit stop, it should have been a no tyre call because they cover RSO and then they're just trying to play a game with an already 14-second gap over the likes of Triton Racing to hold off that until the end. We'll see how it happens next year for them, or at the next 24-hour event, 12-hour event, what have you. Okay, next thing I'm going to talk about is the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series. The NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series doing a good job. Round 10 of the championship, heading ourselves towards the end of the regular season. New Hampshire, the Magic Mile, and it's a very good race in NASCAR circles. I'm not the biggest NASCAR fan. I don't stay up on a Tuesday evening, Wednesday morning to watch this at 3, 4, 5 in the morning. But I have to appreciate what a good race the Magic Mile proved. A couple of cautions here and there. Final 5 laps, Ryan Loser, the qualifier who could not be beaten. Arguably the man that maybe could have taken it to 3-time champion Ray Alfala is the man that takes it to the 3-time champion Ray Alfala. And Ryan Loser goes along and he gets the victory in the final 5 laps, stealing it away from Michael Conti towards the end. Conti's no slouch, he's a former champion. And to take it away from him in the final 5 laps, caution comes out with 2 to go. Ryan Loser does what Loser does best. He makes his way through fields. He scythes his way through fields. And he scores some very, very good wins when he needs to get them. For that driver, though, of Ryan Loser, it's his 3rd win of the season. He's now the most winningest driver overall. He's got 5 top 5s to his name, 2 pole positions. And it is a stunning result for him. It gets him 3rd in the championship. He's now pretty much locked into that chase, barring some really dramatic bad finishes in the last 2 rounds, because there are still drivers behind him who really could make that charge towards the end. But that's besides the point. It's a great race for a number of reasons. You had the early caution, which caused a little bit of confusion on strategy. Ray Alfala recovering to P3, has an issue with Busa with about 60 laps to go, 50 laps to go, there or thereabouts. He gets the car turned around after Busa tries to go down to the inside on him. Alfala turns it around. He gets himself back through the field. He recovers. And in fact, he was on the rear of Ryan Loser for the final few laps. And Alfala just couldn't find a way to get to Loser because Loser's going at the same pace as Alfala is. The two of them are like yin and yang. They're equals. And for Ray Alfala, such an accomplished driver in NASCAR circles. Arguably the second best NASCAR driver ever. Maybe Ty Majeski, you can argue, is first. Maybe you can argue that Ray Alfala is the best driver in the world, and probably is with his 3 titles that he has to his name. But Ray Alfala, P3, after that spin, you have to be happy with it. Championship leader Bobby Zelensky, he has a massive tangle with Ryan Loser on the restarts, and he gets himself into a situation where he's bumped down to the mid-pack, and Zelensky then can't make his way through. And for Bobby Zelensky, very fair credit to him. He's done very well. He got the victory in the road race, which not many people can get that victory in. And for him, getting that victory in the road race, where he is so accomplished in the likes of SOR V8 super trucks, Bobby Zelensky put himself deliberately in the championship line by being very, very consistent. An average finish of 7th place overall in NASCAR terms is a very, very solid result overall. He does a very good job. He's now in the line of fire to get himself potentially the #1 slot heading into the end of the season. 2 rounds to go in the championship, but you talk about drivers like Logan Clampitt, Corey Vincent, Marcus Richardson, Christian Chaloner, and Zach Novak all holding the bubble. And the drivers behind that could challenge, like Dylan Duval, Derek Bordeaux, you talk about Ryan Lowe, Matt Busa, maybe Michael Conti has a slim outside chance. Every race now is crucial with 2 races to go, 3 weeks until we hit the playoffs for the first round, and 8 drivers become 3. Indianapolis, the Brickyard, and Michigan become so crucial on August 1st and August 15th. It becomes a flat-out formality for quite a few of these drivers. You need points, you need to score points, you need to get up there and get your points in and get exactly what you need. And I think quite a few drivers have that perceived ability to make that happen. Well, it's been a fantastic week in sim racing, and you can't argue against that. We've had the greatest race ever in Blancpain. Got the likes of 24 Hours of Spa, NASCAR Peak Antifreeze happened, iRacing Grand Prix Series was fantastic. Did a brilliant job there. Another little bit of news I want to talk about. Bosra folded, which was very weird. I was on the broadcast for that. It was very weird. Bosra folded. But anyway, at the end of this, it's been a fantastic week of sim racing, and it only perceives to get better and better as sim racing goes on. And the more races we get, the more people we get in, the more quick guys we get, the more brilliant races that we have in Blancpain. This is why Blancpain is one of the best races. This is why the 24-hour races are so good. This is why NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series can be really, really entertaining. And the Formula 1, it has to live up to it, the iRacing Grand Prix Series. But who's going to stop Martin Cronkite in that respect? Tuesday at 6. You, me at 6, Tuesday at 6. That's when we're going to be next up on, as per usual, on the schedule. And of course, if you have any questions that you want answered, message me at Jake_Sparey or at iWeeklySN on Twitter. And of course, subscribe to this channel here, SimNews.TV, for more content just like this one. But for the time being, I have been #Do You Mind Jake Sparey, and this was the iWeekly Show.